Good afternoon. All right. It's day 9. This is A Mind of Valor by Westerfield. Tolbert, welcome. Thank you for joining me on this day 9. Today I happen to be going live in the afternoon. The previous days I was going live in the morning before work, but today it felt that I would be going after work. So I'm interested to know if the delivery is different, lighting is different, if my energy is different or any of those things. So feel free to give me feedback on those aspects. Yesterday, we talked about vices. The day before, we talked about vision. We talked about resolve. Today, I'm dumping down that list of contiguous principles to one that I think is particularly important. This term is orientation. So before I give you my personal thoughts on orientation, let me jump into the Merriam-Webster dictionary and define orientation via the book. So we have here the act or process of orienting or being oriented, the state of being oriented, arrangement, alignment, general or lasting direction or thought, inclination, interest, a change of position by organs or organelles or organisms in response to external stimuli. Oriented is intellectually, emotionally, or functionally directed humanistically. All right. That is how orientation is defined. Now, let me tell you why it's important and why I thought it was deserving of being one of the 25 contiguous principles for Mind of Valor on this day 9. Welcome, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're viewing this. I am happy to be here with you if you haven't been joining us so far. What I've been doing over the last couple of days is going live daily, at least once a day. I've put myself to the task to do 30 days at the minimum of going live every day to talk about different topics, to increase my strength and capacity to do live broadcasts, and just to prepare myself for what is to come. This is a process, not a destination. So I've said before, things will change over time, lighting, the production, the subject matter. I eventually plan to bring on different guests to just talk about their experience and their subject matters. For me, this has been a lifelong process. Eventually, you will see me more this desire and this interest into things relevant to product development, branding, marketing, campaigning with other institutions, and just general growth. So this is a process to first learn how to best engage and build audience, and then how can we take that and compound it and grow with it and grow through it. So today we will talk about orientation and why I believe it's particularly important. I've read the definition via the dictionary, Merriam-Webster. And let me just take you down a little journey with me. Think about your first day at university, for example, or in high school, you may have an orientation day prior to the beginning of the school year where you're getting your syllabus, you are getting a lay of the land for the campus, you're learning who your administrators are, you're getting the rule book and different tools for knowing how to communicate in that particular environment, how to seek assistance in that particular environment. So you are being oriented to that space. You're being oriented to that experience. Your course is being set. They are giving you a roadmap, a plan for how to be successful in this particular space, how to be dynamic and make the most of this particular space. You are being trained on how to orient yourself to that particular environment. And the reason that it's important and the reason why it goes hand in hand with the other principles and our overarching theme of asking better questions is because it's in the beginning of an experience. It's the seed of the experience, right? So at that point, you're not vested necessarily. You may have done some work or gone through a process to get to that point. But at the point they're orienting you, they're letting you know that something's going to shift. Something's going to change. There's going to be a different dynamic. These are the expectations. These are the measures of accountability. This is how you should look at this space. This is how you should look at this experience. This is how you should look at this relationship and engage such to get the outcome that you're looking for, or the outcome that the space is designed to produce. So that orientation is setting the course and setting the trajectory. You're learning how to navigate the roadmap that is that space towards whatever that space or that idea is set to materialize into. And orienting ourselves, like I said at the beginning of a collegiate experience, is the same as when you're going into a job for the first time. Oftentimes there's some type of training. There will be your meeting with HR where you're going over the rules and you're filling out paperwork and documents. But again, it is all giving you the roadmap about how to be successful in this space, right? So you're orienting yourself to that environment. I'm saying it again and again, trying to say it in a different way so that it connects and you can understand that asking better questions and orienting yourself go hand in hand. Because it is at that time in orientation where if you don't understand something, you ought to ask the question, because you are clarifying the expectations up front about what engagement should look like, what negotiations should look like, or even if there isn't negotiations past this point, right? At that point, you're learning how to value that space and how you should interpret your experience in that space. If you, for example, get a rule book and you don't read the rule book during that orientation period and you break one of the rules, the expectation is, well, you've been given the rule book, you've been oriented to this space, you should know this, therefore you're going to be held accountable to those same expectations. So how we orient ourselves to information is also critical to how we will engage that information and the purpose for that information. Orientation, therefore, is the prerequisite to engagement. It's the prerequisite to action, because you're setting the course, you're setting the trajectory, you are pointing your cannons of focus and attention in a particular direction. How you orient yourself to a space, a time, an environment, a relationship, a course, a curriculum, whatever else, it will frame your mindset for that situation. So when you're going into the situation now, your mind therefore knows how to interpret different cues and signals in that environment, because you've been trained, for lack of a better understanding, or you've been instructed, you've been shown, you've been groomed to be successful here. Now, if you take that information and you don't apply it, then the consequences, obviously, and the accountability falls on you, because you've been given the parameters, the boundaries of what success looks like and what overstepping looks like in this space. And it's all of that prerequisite while we are orienting ourselves and while we are orienting our identity, our personality to a new environment, so we know how to engage and we know what parts of ourselves need to move, pivot, change, adjust, shift to be successful in said environment. I want to read the definition just one more time, maybe a couple more times, but the act or process of orienting or being oriented. So it is not, it's a process, it's an action, it's a verb. You know, you're course correcting, right? A plane in the sky will constantly be shifting its direction. It's constantly course correcting against the forces of nature. We are very similar to that in how we engage spaces. Also, the definition, the state of being oriented, broadly, arrangement or alignment. Again, you are putting yourself, your compass, right, on the right path. You are calibrating your mental compass for how you should engage that experience or that environment. The state of being oriented, general or lasting direction of thought, inclination, or interest. change of position by organs, organelles, or organisms in response to external stimulus. I really like that third definition because it refers to the response to the external stimulus, right? Right there, that tells you that when you are orienting yourself to anything, there's both your internal environment that will be affected and project out certain energy, and it's also the external, the environment around you that will affect you personally and how you engage. The orientation is the shifting, it's the malleability attached to how we engage that will determine success. If we are to enter a new environment and are determined to stay in that environment, if we are resolved to be in that space, but we have not sufficiently oriented ourselves to the space, it's kind of like the evolution of an organism, right? It's the evolution of our thought that determines what happens in the end, but it's framing it properly as a prerequisite in the beginning as we are orienting our energy, orienting our mind, our resources, our direction. It's a constant course correction. We're constantly course correcting with a particular goal in mind and a particular destination that the space has designated and we have agreed to sufficiently in the orientation period, right? We're asking questions that we can properly frame the expectations. We're asking questions so that the people that we are engaging have an understanding of our minds, our intellect, our ability to interpret different stimuli in the environment so that they feel comfortable and that we feel comfortable. If we leave an orientation uncomfortable, we have not sufficiently engaged the orientation. We're leaving things unsaid. We're leaving things unasked. We're leaving energy unidentified. And that's problematic. It's ill, especially if it's habitual. Eventually, you have to come to terms with what it means to have agency within different spaces and recognizing that we have both the freedom and the responsibility when we're in spaces to direct our energy, right? To direct our focus, to direct our attention, to properly orient ourselves and others around us. A lot of what I've said prior was how we, orient ourselves. But there's some reciprocity here because just as we are being trained, we are also training the environment. We're training our peers on the ways that we will prefer to be communicated with. We are training our peers on the things that we value, on the things that are on our hierarchy of needs, the things that for us are what? The things that we process our decisions through, how we view the world, our particular perspective, our unique place in a set of experiences. That reciprocity that comes from being oriented also allows us to impart onto other people the necessary messages so that the environment can also be oriented to our energy and what our expectations are of that place and what our expectations are of the environment as a whole, and the clarity that comes from the orientation, from asking questions, the difficult questions, the ones that have you kind of stutter and you're kind of apprehensive to ask a question, to raise your hand, right? You're like, I don't know. I don't want to distract. I don't want to take away. I don't want to. You're trying to convince yourself all the reasons why your particular question wouldn't be valued in space or received. Boom. Therein lies the mandate to ask it. Make sure it gets answered. Because if you don't get it answered at that time, chances are uncertainty will compound. Misdirection will compound. That feeling of not knowing will compound over time. And what could have been a journey to a solution becomes a perpetual journey somewhere else, far from where it was intended. We want to avoid that. We want to avoid getting off track and getting off course and misdirecting ourselves. We don't want our confusion to stimulate the environment and create more confusion. But in my experience, I found that asking the question doesn't breed more confusion. It brings clarity. And especially during that orientation period, when we are granted the liberty of appearing ignorant, we are granted the safety to ask questions. We got to take that opportunity. For no other reason than we may be the voice of somebody else who's less confident than us. We may be the voice of reason for a managerial question that they've been trying to answer themselves. It could be workshopped right there in that live space, because now other people can chime in. And again, we're bringing in different domains of competency, different understandings, different wheelhouses of learned, critically interrogated information to produce a better solution somewhere else. We're borrowing from this tree to enjoy the shade over here. Our duty is to understand and apply that understanding in a meaningful way so that whatever we touch is improved once we've left, once we've gone on to the next place, plateau, opportunity. So take the time, use the energy, both be confident and humble, but recognize how we orient ourselves will frame the experience for us, will direct our mindset in that experience, how we build up our fortitude and our resolve. All of this is in process. But that orientation in the beginning is preparation. It's key. It's mapping out the journey. It's learning. And we're here to learn. We're here to ask better questions. We are here to take a journey of growth because a mind of valor is worth pursuing. This is Westerfield Tolbert, and this is day 9. Thank you for joining me, and I encourage you to take the time to properly orient yourself to any space, environment, relationship that you're in, or that you will enter. And if you're in a space where you think that you can't reorient yourself to the space, or there's something blocking you from reorienting yourself to the space, that is probably the perfect time to take a step back, take a 30,000-foot view, and see what needs to change. If you can't change the environment, change yourself. Thank you for joining me on day 9, and I will pick this up on day 10.